Welcome to Lesson 2, where you're going to learn all about the National Mahjong League card. Before we start this lesson, I want to be sure that you have your 2023 National Mahjong League card in front of you. It is essential to have this card when learning this lesson. The links to purchase the card are in the description for Lesson 1, but I will also put those links in Lesson 2 as well. Lesson 2 will be split up into 2 parts. So let's go ahead and get started with part 1. Each year, the card face rotates between blue as shown on the 2023 card and red as shown on the 2022 card. Next year, the face of the card will be red again. Starting with the left side of the card, we're going to go over all of the elements on the National Mahjong League card. Remember we spoke about the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde tile, the white dragon, also known as the soap. Well, the National Mahjong League has this nifty little reminder at the top of the card about the white dragon also being a 0. Each line on the card represents a hand that you can complete for the win, or as we so excitedly say once we've won, Mah Jongg. And the card is broken down into sections. 2023 is the one section. 2, 4, 6, 8 is another section, and any like numbers and addition hands. The flowers and the winds shown here as F's for flowers and NEWS for north, east, west, and south are always shown in navy. And I do apologize if the color is slightly off on the photo, but if you take a look on your card, you will see that all of the blue shown on the card is in navy. The number of colors on a particular line or hand represent how many suits you're going to be using in that hand. Of course, we learned in Lesson 1 that there are 3 suits: the bams, the dots, and the cracks. So if you take a look at this hand here, we've got the flowers, which are always navy in color, and then we have a single grouping of tiles, the 2, 0, 2, 3, in one color, this Kong of 2s in another color, and the Kong of 3s in another color. And that would indicate that there are 3 suits required for this hand. Now, it doesn't matter what order the suits are in. They can be in any order that you like. So the 2023 grouping can be cracks, and then you could have the Conga 2s in dots and the Conga 3s in bams. So these colors on the card don't match the suit tiles at all. So you've got to remember that. It's a bit tricky because our brain automatically wants to associate these colors matching the suits, but they don't. And many people wish that these colors would have been something other than the colors that are on the suit tiles. Next thing we have is the X at the end of the line. Now the X stands for exposed. An exposed hand means that during the game you are able to call or take a tile that has been discarded by another player to make an exposure. And you're going to see how this plays out in future lessons, but I just want you to know that the X does mean exposed. And if any of you have ever played the game Rummy Cube, then you might be familiar with what exposing tiles is all about. Now we'll talk about the C at the end of some of the hands. The C stands for concealed or closed. Either term is completely acceptable. And what the C means is that if a tile is thrown or discarded by another player, you cannot call or take that discard and make an exposure. Your hand is played completely concealed without doing that, which makes these hands a little bit more challenging. And again, we're going to talk more about this as the lessons move on. Now we have the values shown at the very end of the lines. And these values can represent points, as in 25 points, or if you are playing for money, which is always fun, this would represent 25 cents. And we will go over more about these winning values a little further on in this lesson. Now we'll go over more details about each of the sections on the card. Let's start with the 2023 section. This section contains all numbers of the current year, 2023. Each year the card comes out, the numbers will change to the current year for the card. I'd like to mention that the card is issued annually, but it doesn't come out at the beginning of January as one might think. It actually comes out the end of March, very beginning of April. So in, let's say, the end of March, beginning of April of next year, these hands will change to 2024. So all of these numbers are 2023. And you could see in line 1, you've got your Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde dragon soap tile that in this hand is showing as zeros. All right, now the other thing is to note that the parentheticals on the card are extremely important to read because these parentheticals change up what can be done with the hand. So it's like an addition to the rules or an addendum to the hand, so to speak. In this particular one, it says any one or two suits. The reason it says any one or two suits is because we have two sides of this line. We have the left side, which shows in one suit because there's one color, and we have the right side, which shows in two suits representing two colors. Now I want to bring to your attention this parenthetical, which states 2023, any suit, pungs, any dragon. This actually should have stated pungs any two dragons. It could be a little confusing with just saying pungs any dragons, because then one might think that you could mix up the dragons among these two pungs, but that is not the case. What it means is that you can use any two of the dragons for these two pungs, but they must all match. So each pung of dragons has to have matching dragon tiles. So if you were to use soaps for the first pung, they'd have to be all soaps. And if you were to use greens for the second pung, showing here, they'd have to be all green dragons. The next section is 2, 4, 6, 8. And this section consists of all even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8. Next is our any like numbers section. And any like numbers means that you can use any number that you choose between 1 and 9, but whatever number you choose has to be in every one of the groupings. So for line 1 here, if you use 8 dots to begin with, then you would need to continue with 8s in the other 2 suits, because there are 3 colors here, so that indicates 3 suits. Now remember, it doesn't matter how you switch around those 8s. You might want to start out with 8 cracks or 8 bams. Regardless of what number you choose to use, they could go in any position here on this any like numbers line. It doesn't matter what suit you begin with on these any like number hands, as long as you use 3 suits as indicated into the parentheses, you can put the suits in any order that you like. Next up, the addition hands section. And the addition hands are not always on the card. Actually, there's either addition hands or multiplication hands that periodically show up on the card. The last several years, there were no addition hands, and I believe one year there were just a few multiplication hands thrown into a couple of the sections. But very often, these math hands, addition or multiplication, will have their own section. And they're back again this year, and many people are very happy about that. The addition hands shown here have got to be played in the exact number shown. Now, I did mention that it's important to read what's in the parentheses. However, in the parentheses here, it doesn't say these numbers only. It says only any 3 suits. Okay, now for a newer player, that could be quite confusing. But for those of us that have been playing this game for many, many years, we know that any of the math hands are always the numbers shown. So I'm letting you know that these have to be these numbers only. All right, now we're going to move on to the middle panel of the card, and we're going to talk about our quints. The quints are unique, and we learned about that quint grouping in lesson 1 because you have to use jokers. So in order to play a quint hand, you would want to have a few jokers at least to start, and maybe some other pieces of the hand. And if you take a look at this very first line, those like numbers, just like in the like numbers section, can be any number between 1 and 9, and it says it right in the parentheses. It can be any 2 suits, any like numbers, and any wind. So the wind tile showing here, the north, can be west, south, or east. It doesn't matter which one you use. For whatever you use in the first quint of numbers must be identical for the second quint of numbers. And again, we see that in parentheses it says any 2 suits, so you must use 2 different suits when you choose your number of choice. And as mentioned earlier, the winds are always shown in a navy color. Next, we'll take a look at the consecutive run section, the middle section of the middle panel. Line 2 in this section has a left and a right side. On the left side, it shows 1 color. On the right side, it shows 2 colors. And in parentheses, it does say any run 1 or 2 suits. With starting this run, you have to start with a number that will not end any higher than 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9. You cannot begin any higher than 6 with this run. Now we go on to the 1, 3, 7, 9 section of the card, and this section contains all odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And one thing I'd like you to take notice of in the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 section is that it's pretty much divided between low-end odds 1, 3, 5 and then high-end odds 5, 7, 9 with 3 hands containing all 5 numbers. Now we move on to our Winds and Dragons section of the card, and I do want to apologize again for the inconsistency in the navy color, but if you take a look at your card you will see they are all navy in color. This category is primarily Winds and Dragons. Many of the sections have flowers and or dragons thrown into them. Of course, this particular section is a Winds and Dragons section, so those dragons are pretty much expected to be seen here. However, there are numbers in this section as well, and what I want to mention is that in most of the categories you'll have flowers and dragons added into them. But if the heading is 2, 4, 6, 8, for example, you're not going to see any other numbers other than 2, 4, 6, 8, but you will see flowers and possibly dragons. The next section we're going to talk about is the 3, 6, 9 section. And the 3, 6, 9 section of the card consists of numbers 3, 6, and 9. That means you're not going to find 2, 4, 5, or 7, or 1 in this section. So they're going to all be 3, 6, 9. So you've got a little bit of even numbers in this section, actually 1, and you have a couple of odd numbers in this section. Then we have our singles and pairs section of the card, and this section consists of only single tiles or pairs. And yes, these hands are harder to make because what can't you use in a single or a pair? Yep, you got it, jokers. And that means the value is going to reflect that this hand is more difficult to make. Next up in this lesson are sample hands. This is going to be a lot of fun, but you've got to get your brain power working. So let's get going. Head over to Lesson 2, Part 2 to begin this fun, interactive lesson. And don't forget to subscribe to the MahjCon YouTube channel and click on the bell so we stay connected. Consider joining the MahjCon Facebook group and Instagram page.